the US doesn't have enough homes. This line shows how many months it would take for the current supply of housing to run out. It's a measure of housing supply, and it's been dropping for a decade. And this line shows how housing prices have changed. They've skyrocketed in the past year. For rental units, the percentage of empty buildings is the lowest it's been in 3 decades, while rent prices keep going up. But here's the thing. Often when new buildings go up in these places, people hate them.
It's hard to describe, but you know it when you see it. Gentrification buildup!
Most often, they're talking about new buildings like this, boxy, modern, multifamily homes.
I saw one day that sort of hit me, and it was a TikTok that was showing this building in Camden, New Jersey.
That's Jerusalem Demsas, a Vox policy reporter.
You know, the comments ranged from a bunch of different things. There was people kind of deriding the building itself, saying that it was causing displacement, saying, get ready for a Starbucks to come and pop up.
Comments like this are a common narrative. To many, these buildings don't just look bland and artificial. They signal raised rents, displacement, and the complete transformation of a neighborhood to a place that's richer and wider. But in this case, what happened next might surprise you.
I started going around trying to find the specific location, walking around Google Maps. And eventually I find it, and I find the building, I look at the address, I look into property records to figure out what this building was. And not only is it new housing, it's actually new affordable housing.
Turns out there's a lot we get wrong about how we see new construction in the US. Whether it's DC, Oakland, or Austin, newer apartment buildings in the US have a distinct look, one that sticks out against older architecture. But these buildings don't look like historic homes for a reason.
This building is actually one of the cheapest ways to build an apartment building right now.
The design is strategic. According to reporting from Curbed, this kind of architecture is built to fit within restraints like cost, height limits, and safety requirements. It's why many of these structures are what's known as 5/1 or 1+5. That means there are several levels of wood-framed construction, which usually contain apartments and is known as Type 5 in the building code. That's over one level with a concrete base, which usually contains commercial space or parking, known as Type 1. The light frame wood construction, flat windows, and paneling around the building are all ways to build as affordably as possible.
And that means you're able to build more affordable housing. I think a lot of the time people don't understand that in order to get affordable housing, the actual components of the building have to be cheap to develop and to construct.
The results can be bland and look artificial, but that authenticity problem is an old one. In this book, The Invention of Brownstone Brooklyn, Suleiman Osman writes about the iconic brownstones of Brooklyn, a design that today is widely considered to be deeply authentic to New York. But in the 19th century, compared to the mostly wooden homes that predated them, critics actually dismissed brownstones as modern and artificial. They called them out as products of the mechanical age, poorly built and subject to decay, with a dehumanizing monotony. Sound familiar?
Comments in a lot of those TikTok videos, they say things like, oh, it looks like mass-produced, they look phony. I mean, that's literally the exact same language that was being used in the 1900s to talk about the brownstones.
That building we mentioned earlier in Camden, New Jersey, was built using low-income housing tax credits. It has 245 units geared towards seniors and families making less than 60% of the area's median income. It's easy to see why the construction of affordable housing like this is a good thing. But what about the new market rate buildings that service middle and higher income people? They've come to symbolize displacement, or the idea that existing residents could be forced involuntarily to move out, often for reasons like rent increases or eviction. Since developers like to build in places where prices are already rising, new buildings tend to correlate with those increased rents and displacement. But a growing number of researchers have tried to find out whether these new buildings are the cause of displacement. They were testing the demand effect, or the idea that the new buildings increase demand for the neighborhood, which in turn cause rent hikes that force people to leave. But the research suggests the opposite, an overwhelming supply effect, where increasing the supply of new buildings, even if they are market rate, made housing less scarce and decreased rents and risks of displacement, especially in the areas closest to the new buildings. New housing freed up space within a neighborhood for new residents to move in, without taking up existing homes. And it also meant when they moved from their past homes, they freed up housing units in those neighborhoods as well. But here's the thing. Less displacement was happening near new construction, but it didn't necessarily mean less gentrification was happening, because gentrification and displacement aren't the same thing. While displacement happens to people, gentrification happens to a place. When an area experiences demographic change, typically going from lower income tenants to higher income ones, shown here in the darker green. Over time, demographic shifts in the neighborhood could still occur, not because existing residents were displaced, but for other reasons. Maybe people decided to move to more desirable neighborhoods, or some passed away. And the research suggests when that happened, residents were more likely to be replaced by richer people, meaning gentrification was happening, but without forced displacement. So to reduce both displacement and gentrification, you need more market rate and affordable housing, like that building in New Jersey. Affordable housing, along with policies like rental assistance, preserve income diversity, making sure that those with lower incomes can always live in a particular neighborhood.
If there is a scarcity of a product, we know this in every market. When there is not enough of something, the only people who get anything are rich people. And so you have to make sure that there's enough for everyone at every level.
But there's one very big obstacle to building housing for everyone, everywhere. Wealthy neighborhoods across the US are really good at blocking new housing developments. Take a look at this map of New Haven, Connecticut, compared to the nearby, wealthier town of Woodbridge, Connecticut. When we take a look at local zoning laws and where multifamily developments are allowed in these areas, there's virtually no land in Woodbridge zoned for them. Single-family zoning laws block the vast majority of apartments or affordable housing in this area.
When you have political power concentrated in the hands of very few wealthy homeowners and they say we're not going to allow housing here, of course there's going to be an unequal distribution of housing.
In 2020, after a 4-unit multifamily building was proposed in Woodbridge, a group of residents even created these flyers saying, "Do we want this next door?" pitting single-family homes against multifamily buildings. And this kind of conflict happens everywhere, from Woodbridge to Soho to San Francisco. In some places, activists have found a way to use the language of gentrification against changing zoning laws. For example, in response to a proposed California bill pushing for more housing near areas with transit, including a specific percentage of affordable housing, a group called Livable California said building more housing would add jet fuel to a gentrification crisis.
They see the power of this rhetoric and they are using it as a tool to muddle the debate, to make it seem like building new housing is actually going to create displacement when we know what creates displacement is not building new housing. That's what's so kind of dangerous about this entire debate. We have gotten to a place where the actual policy solution is seen as part of the problem.